chat. So I want to see this video or so. Apparently this video popped up or something on my feed. Apparently the mass deportation, arriba Trump, paisanos. So I'm curious if it's talking about like the whole deportation of the Mexican brothers and sisters. Well, actually it's more than just Mexicans though, but you know. I'm curious what this is all about. Let's see.
Tengo 76 años, y soy veterano en la guerra de Vietnam. Como hay aquí también. Mi hija es abogada aquí. Los gobiernos no trabajan como debe ser.
Yo, what's up, guys? We're live in El Paso, Texas. Behind me, that sign says Bienvenidos. That means welcome to the United States of America. Our Latin American correspondent, Josue, is across the border right now, speaking to some recently deported people in the border town of Ciudad Juarez. Here's the scene on the ground.
Pues me agarró la migración trabajando sin papeles allá en un rancho.
¿Cuántos años logró estar allá en Estados Unidos?
26 años más o menos.
¿Como del 99?
Sí,
¿Y su familia se quedó allá?
sí,
¿Y su familia ya es legal allá?
sí. Se te cae el sueño americano.
¿Por qué saliste de El Salvador?
Para poder sacar a mi familia adelante, pues, porque allá está fregado también. Pues gana.
It's actually not fucked up right now, actually, to be honest, compared to how it was before. I know what he's talking about. So he said that that El Salvador is pretty fucked up. It's actually not anymore, actually. So.
$10 al día, $15 al día, salí para poder a ver si podía cumplir el sueño americano.
Ya ahora ya no, sueño americano ya no.
Ya no.
Ibas en busca del sueño americano.
Sí, lastimosamente se nos acabó el sueño.
¿Ahorita sigues esperando lo del sueño americano?
No, yo digo que ya esto se acabó, ya no podemos pasar para Estados Unidos.
Pues es difícil el sueño americano. Para lograr entrar, va, sin papeles es difícil y pues para lograr hacer los papeles, pues está más difícil todavía. Está muy duro el sueño americano, pero hay que echarle ganas que tiene.
¿Quieres vivir en los Estados Unidos o no?
Oh, no, gracias.
¿Qué estás haciendo aquí en los Estados Unidos?
Oh, vengo aquí al centro de compras.
Oh, para comprar cosas.
Sí, creo que la cultura en México es más divertida y la comunidad, la gente. Si tienes ganas de hacer algo en México, vas a cualquier lugar y aquí es un poco muy diferente la vida. Amo Juárez y México.
As you guys know, the border's been a pretty hot topic for the past couple years, and during the Biden administration, the El Paso Juarez border was by far one of the most overrun by undocumented migration. It's a bit of a tense scene here right now, but there is some very impassioned individuals who are speaking their mind right here on the border. I think I can hear one right now.
Arriba Trump, paisanos. ¿Qué más? ¿Qué más? Mucha violencia, los otros inmigrantes, roba y roba. Inmigrantes roba celulares, pega y roba celulares. Los otros mexicanos puedo trabajar también, no solamente los jóvenes de otros países. ¿Qué pasó con Guatemala y Honduras, El Salvador? 100 niños diarios, regreso escondido en la otra puente. ¿Por qué no cámaras por eso? Criminals. Afganistán, 2,000 muertos en 20 años. México, 2,000 muertos cada semana, 600 semanas enseguida. Can you back up just a little bit?
Just the next shot is just him just fucking running away with his cart. Oh, that was a good one. Oh, that's a good one. I like that one. Oh man, that's funny, dude. That's a good one.
Hey, what's up, guys? Or should I say, ¿qué tal, amigos? ¿Quieres escuchar todo este video en español? Simplemente dirígete a la parte inferior derecha de la pantalla y haz clic en el botón que dice configuración. Aparecerá un vara de herramientas y solo tienes que hacer clic en el botón que dice pistas de audio y seleccionar español. Y boom,
Ponga. You don't have to say click or so. You can say, puedes ponerlo en español cuando tú presas este botón. How do they say it? I don't know, it's just differently or so.
Pues de esto, todo este video está en español. Ok, adiós, amigos. The border's been a hot button issue for the past couple years, and it's definitely what got Donald Trump elected, among other obvious factors.
Black spaces are important, and they should be enjoyed by Black people, for Black people.
We covered the
Wow, that is the biggest segregation I've ever seen in my entire... Wow, we are bringing segregation back, aren't we, huh? Wow. We're just... Damn, dude. Damn, it's like... When was... Damn, dude, that's like 19... What is that, 19 something or so? What is that, 19... Dude, we're... Damn, dude. Damn, that... Wow, that's crazy. Wow, that's crazy to hear that, actually. That is very crazy to hear that, to be honest.
the border a bunch over the course of the past year and a half, and I'm not gonna lie to you, it is a up and horrendous situation. The key thing I think to think about here is that two things can be true at the same time. So first off, it is true that there has been incidents of horrific crimes that have been done by people who are undocumented, much of which has been relentlessly publicized to give the impression that undocumented migrants commit more crimes than US citizens. But it is also true that the path to citizenship right now is totally broken, and a lot of that has to do with the Biden administration's lax policy regarding asylum seekers, which has bloated the immigration courts to the point of dysfunction. So to qualify for legal asylum in the US, one must be able to prove that they've suffered persecution or have a reasonable fear that their life is in danger due to their ethnicity, religion, nationality, membership in a social group, or political opinion. Asylum is applied for by way of a request form called I-589, which is submitted to a federal judge who then has the power to either approve or deny your asylum request. If denied, you'll be deported, and if approved, you'll be given refugee status, which allows you to get a work permit, social security card, government assistance, and eventually the ability to become a lawful citizen if you don't break the law during the first couple years. So it used to be, if you wanted to apply for asylum in America, you had to wait in Mexico, you had to request an appointment, and then once it was time for your appointment, you could go into America briefly and be heard by a judge. Well, that changed under the Biden administration, and it made it so you could actually come to the US illegally and make your asylum application here, and you couldn't be deported until you were heard for your hearing. So that should explain some of the footage that you saw in our coverage of the border crisis last year.
What the fuck? Are you serious?
Where after hopping the border, migrants were not attempting to evade Border Patrol, but rather deliberately seeking them out to begin the asylum-seeking process.
¿Qué significa asilo?
Pues que ayudan a las personas con los niños que vienen de México para acá.
¿Es un proceso fácil?
Pues yo digo que sí.
So because of that overflow, right now the average wait time is 7.5 years in New York City for an asylum appointment. So you have millions of people who came here illegally who are awaiting their application hearing, sitting in shelters and elsewhere in the US. They can't get their work papers. It's tough for them, tough for the border, tough for everybody. It's a pretty bad situation. So Trump's plan is to cancel all new asylum hearings moving forward.
And we gotta do it.
Dozens of migrants were notified their appointments with U.S. Customs were canceled moments after Trump took office.
No, aún no me llegaba la cita. 8 meses aquí en México y aún nada que llegaba la cita.
¿Y aquí en Ciudad Juárez cuánto tiempo ya?
Voy para el mes.
Tengo aquí esperando 1 año y medio la cita, pero no me salió. Y tampoco...
Jesus Christ! Holy! Oh my God, dude. Dude, bro, at this point, I would just go back and just go live life over there, you know? Shit, man.
Fue dado el intento de pasar, nada de eso.
Yo tenía la cita aprobada ya.
¿Del CPM?
Así es, yo la tenía para el 27 de enero.
¿Ya tenías tú la cita pedida?
Hasta la cita los eliminaron. Ya no la podemos pedir ya.
Exactamente el lunes me cayó el correo de confirmación por la CBP que el programa estaba cancelado y que mi cita ya no era válida. Ya no puedo presentarme al puerto de entrada.
¿Y tú ahora cómo ves la llegada de Trump al poder?
Negativa ahorita con lo de la cita porque realmente yo estaba ilusionado que ya iba para allá. Yo con mi novia ya estábamos ilusionados que íbamos para allá y pues... No se logró.
And yeah, it just sucks right now in general. So we're gonna go talk to Josué and figure out what the heck's going on.
Mi contacto americano.
¿Qué onda?
¿Qué onda? ¿Cómo estamos?
Muy bien, no frontera, no problema.
No visa, no problema. I feel the American dream here. Oh, shit.
Mi cosa favorita sobre México son los perros en la calle.
Aquí hay muchos perros. Hay gangas de perros que controlan las calles. Esto es todo un tema, porque aquí de repente hay calles en las que no puedes pasar porque una ganga de perros la controla.
What the fuck? Are you serious? That's happening over there? Holy shit, forget about the gangs. Be scared of the gang dogs. Holy, oh my God, that sounds terrifying.
Adentro de México. ¿Eso es legal?
Ya eres color sepia de este lado. Hey chicos, esto es Canal 5 con Josué y...
This is Andrew, you're watching Channel 5. We're here at the US-Mexico border, and as many of you know, Trump just issued some massive deportation orders.
Hoy estamos haciendo un reportaje acerca de los problemas en la frontera, la llegada de Donald Trump, la caída del CPM-1 y pues todos los problemas fronterizos que enfrenta hoy día aquí Ciudad Juárez.
Yeah, I can't really go to Mexico, and Josué can't come to the US because of visa restrictions, so this is what we're doing.
No hay visa, pero tampoco hay pedo. Estamos entrando justo a uno de los túneles que nos dicen que utilizaban anteriormente los migrantes para para cruzar.
Tonight we are getting a closer look inside that man-made tunnel that connects all the way from Ciudad Juarez into El Paso, which prompted a multi-agency response from both U.S. and Mexican officials.
Bueno, los coyotes por este tipo de túneles cruzaban a los migrantes. Sí, hay muchas cucarachas. Uf. Se supone que todo esto conecta a la ciudad, ¿no?
Todo lo que es el centro de Juárez conecta a la catedral y a una escuela que se llama La Revolución, y de aquel lado de Estados Unidos pues ya conecta con varios locales.
Así de antiguos son, ¿no? Como cuando se traficaba alcohol, cuando el alcohol era ilegal.
De Capón y así. Y hace no tanto, a lo mejor unos 10, 15 años fue cuando clausuraron todo este pedo.
Okay.
Se supone, ¿verdad? Que ya quedó todo clausurado, pero pues realmente no.
No sabemos bien.
No sabemos.
Por obvias razones no mostramos en qué lugar nos dejaron pasar, pero sí, sí es unos túneles bastante bien hechos. Podemos observar bastantes cucarachas muertas en el suelo. Ah, sí, mira, aquí se ve la puerta que alguna vez hubo, ¿no?
Yeah, hey, Nicole. So they're filling and sealing up this sophisticated tunnel that sources say transnational criminal organization were moving around 1,000 people a week through this tunnel.
¿Cuántas cosas no habrán pasado?
Holy cow, dude. That is the most craziest thing to hear, that this is what's been happening or something, where they've been smuggling people in. Dude, man, I wonder how long it took them to make this man-made cave, or in order for them to like just keep constantly doing it for weeks.
The majority in that case, especially if you're coming through a tunnel, will be exploited. Either not just sexual exploitation, but fraud, labor fraud as well, and forced labor.
Sigamos en nuestra investigación acerca de los migrantes en Juárez. Y aquí a mis espaldas está Gracia Abundante, una iglesia / refugio donde se le cobra 100 pesos a cada migrante para que tenga acceso a un catre y a baño y a la cocina. La verdad es que la mayoría son venezolanos y colombianos.
Nosotros estamos pagando una habitación, pues nuestro pensamiento en estos momentos es quedarnos y esperar a lo que Trump y Dios decida. O sea...
You also have to consider how they made it too, since you couldn't use heavy or large machineries, otherwise you draw too much attention. Oh, you're right. Oh shit, I'm curious. I'm just curious how long this would have taken or so.
Cualquier momento yo sé que sí nos va a dar la oportunidad, pero debemos esperar.
O sea, que cruzar legalmente, ¿no has intentado otra forma?
No, me da mucho miedo, sobre todo por mi hija.
Okay.
Estoy alquilando una habitación, que ahí estamos en la lucha constante a ver qué sucede. No nos vamos a quitar la esperanza y esperamos que los que tenemos la cita, que tuvimos la cita confirmada, esperamos que seamos los primeros a ver qué pasa.
Sí, cobran 100 pesos diarios.
100 pesos diarios, ¿y a qué tienes acceso con esos 100 pesos?
Solo a bañarse y a cocinar.
Si lo ponen un día por ahí, que yo era un medio extraterrestre, pero arriba es Jesús.
Gracias. Pues ahorita va a estar más difícil con Trump, ¿no?
Yo les recomiendo que se queden aquí los que son de aquí, porque va a estar cabrón. Más bien me tengo que quedar aquí porque si paso, me encierran 5 años.
You can't have people pouring in from the prisons all over the world and from mental institutions all over the world and dumped into our country.
Entienda que nosotros los inmigrantes no es que queramos pasar, sino pues quiero pasar legalmente, con todos mis papeles legalmente.
Yo quería pasar a legal, pues, hasta esperar y no se me dio la oportunidad.
Estamos sufriendo poco a poco, pero con la bendición de Dios todo a lograrlo.
As you can see from these interviews, many migrants who made the perilous journey north from countries like Venezuela, Honduras, and Colombia aren't really considering going back home.
Bueno, mi razón era porque me iba a entregar a la frontera, pero tengo amigos que vinieron conmigo subiendo y lo regresaron, o sea, entraron a Estados Unidos, entonces yo dije, no, me costó mucho subir para acá para otra vez empezar de cero y yo dije, pues ni modo, me quedo aquí trabajando, tendré que quedar acá a unos años.
After all, the journey took many of them several months, if not more, and was quite costly.
De traslado.
Yeah, it's fucking expensive to cross over, especially from those areas, coming over to here. That shit is wild, dude. I've heard stories about it. I've heard so many stories, you know.
Unos 6 meses.
¿Cómo llegaste?
Pues me trasladé en autobús, también me subí en el tren.
Para poder llegar de Ciudad de México hasta aquí, me duró un mes.
Un mes, 17 días para llegar.
¿En qué venías?
Caminando.
¿Caminando? ¿Te aventaste caminando hasta acá?
Casi un año echando.
Yeah, there are people who actually walk all the way over here.
¿Hasta acá hasta Ciudad Juárez?
Acá llega a Ciudad Juárez porque fue tocado caminar. Así a veces cuando nos bajaban del tren tocaba caminar y caminar. A veces nos quedamos en montes. Hicieron que pararan el tren, eran como las 2 de la mañana y entonces vimos que migración estaba en la parte del Torreón y entonces justamente paró el tren. Nos tuvimos que meter por el desierto y durar hasta las 4 de la mañana para...
The train she's referring to is called La Bestia, or the Beast. It's a cheap freight train that's meant to deliver raw materials, not people, from south to north, beginning at the Mexico-Guatemala border. Because of its lax security, many migrants jump on La Bestia while it's moving and take it as far north as they can. It's estimated that in 2023, there were as many as 1,000 migrants hopping the El Paso-Juarez border every single day, much of whom had rode La Bestia from the south.
Una vez una señora venezolana, de hecho, se cruzó, pero se cayó justo cuando la bestia empezó. Entonces la señora se quedó en las vías así hasta que pasara, pero las vías tienen un seguro. Entonces el seguro la agarró y pues la hizo cachitos. Y justamente fue ahí.
Unfortunately, this uptick led to a drastic surge in violent crime in Ciudad.
Yep, there's been lots of stories or so they've told me or so of people of like, well, not just the crime itself, but like people, you know, some shit happened and then, well, dead.
Juarez, which had been relatively calm in the years prior, despite once being dubbed as Murder City, after Juarez saw 3,600 homicides in 2011. To clarify, the surge in violent crime wasn't a result of the migrants themselves, but rather the criminal organizations vying for control of the lucrative human smuggling routes along the border.
El peligro de los niños en los trenes, las mujeres, a que sean violadas, a que sean secuestradas por los narcos y todo eso, es mucho riesgo.
Much like the cartels control the flow of drugs into the US, they also control the flow of migrants. I've learned from personal experience that every single inch of the US-Mexico border is claimed by a cartel, who impose a tax on coyotes and pay authorities to look the other way. They are also known to squeeze and extort money out of migrants along the way, which adds another element of extreme risk to their already treacherous journey.
No les importa la situación que uno esté, nada. Me llegaron casi a secuestrar a mi hija, pero pues con la bendición de Dios, el Señor, yo no sé, se le abrió el corazón y me la dio.
As briefly mentioned, stealing...
Right? Like the funniest thing about it, right? I made a video about this a long time ago, right? In one of the villages or so that I was with or so, right? I was staying there with some family members or so. It used to be pretty dangerous or so to be able to go out at night because of all the gangbangs and shit like that, right? But ever since a certain cartel group or so moved in or so to take control of the territory, they literally cleaned up the entire village itself. And now people are walking around at night and there's no problem whatsoever, you know? I'm like, shit, that's crazy. So some of them, I even asked them, right? Some of them asked, like, literally straight up, they think it's actually they're like, whatchamacallit? They're, anti-heroes to them, apparently. Some of them are like anti-heroes to them because like they cleaned up the area because they know that, like, because the problem is the village that was at or so, right? It's far away, so there is no police for like miles, okay? So then like these guys came, so apparently I don't know which specific cartel, they didn't tell me which one it was, but then he told me, like, yeah, they cleaned up this area so we can now walk at night. There was like a lot of people walking at night now. They had like restaurants open at night and all this other stuff, even like super late or so. When I went there, because that was the second time I went there, when it was like super clean apparently. The first time I went out there, it was not safe whatsoever. It was like everyone was super strict or so. You had to be indoors at a certain hour and everything like that. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's very crazy how they like see things, you know, from their perspective, you know. Like some of them do actually praise them, you know. So some of them do actually.
Stealing children away from their mothers for ransom is a common way the cartels will get money out of migrants. Oftentimes, this happens along La Bestia's route, but other times the extortion continues even after they've been trafficked into the U.S. According to Ruben Garcia, who's the program director at a migrant shelter in El Paso called the Annunciation House.
I do believe it was a Sinaloa cartel. Is it? I don't know which one specifically because I never asked, so that's the only reason why.
house. This story is all too common.
My name is Ruben Garcia, and we're in Annunciation House, one of our hospitality houses.
Annunciation House, a local shelter that helps asylum seekers and refugees.
As Garcia explains, the shelter would house close to 1,000 refugees in any given week.
We just received a mom from Guatemala. She came up with her 4-year-old daughter with a smuggler in Juarez. The smuggler sold her to another smuggler, and that smuggler took her 4-year-old daughter and then took mom to where the metal fence is. You'll get your daughter once you're on the other side. Here's a cell phone. It was a way to get a lot more money. When she got to Border Patrol, the Central Processing Center, there they took her to get a medical checkup, and she was able to get one of the officers to listen to her, who then called Homeland Security Investigation. She had a cousin in Florida that had helped her with some of the money to pay to the smuggler. They set up the meeting in Las Cruces. And there they showed up, they made the arrest, they had the 4-year-old. They also had a 6-week-old baby that they had taken away from another mother. They reunited the 4-year-old with mom, and they were both at our house, and that's how we heard the story.
Jesus fucking Christ, dude. Holy cow, dude. That is fucking crazy to hear that. That's actually one of the stories that I usually hear that's pretty common around here, you know? I heard there was a massive fallout with the gang. El Chapo was the leader of his son, took over the New Bloods, wanted to something different, and they had a cope where that part of the cartel defects with the help of a rival, and now it's the entire full-scale mini civil war.
Story of how that all happened. So that's what I mean.
In lieu of these kinds of horrific situations, President Trump passed Executive Order 14157, designating 6 cartels and 2 gangs as foreign terrorist organizations.
President Trump's administration has plans to designate several cartels and criminal groups as foreign terrorist organizations.
Something which could give the U.S. military and other law enforcement bodies the power to invade Mexico. But prospect of an invasion aside, many Mexicans say they support Trump's designation and hope that Mexico will do its part in holding these organizations accountable.
¿Qué piensas sobre eso?
Creo que está bien la clasificación porque pues son personas que hacen daño y que no se tientan mucho el corazón con algunas personas. Y estaría bien el título.
Many Mexicans also understand the need for heightened border security on both sides.
No estoy en contra de los inmigrantes ni nada de eso, no soy racista ni nada de eso.
¿Usted cree bien que estén deportando a toda la gente que están deportando?
Si están ilegalmente es un delito.
Si van a deportar, que sí deporten a las personas que de verdad están haciendo daño. Las personas que están trabajando no se lo merecen porque también están con un sueño y están manteniendo a su familia. Trump debería darse cuenta de eso, que él también tiene familia.
¿Y tu familia está en Venezuela o en Estados Unidos?
Tengo familia en Venezuela y en Perú.
Okay. ¿Y ellos qué opinan de tu situación actual?
No, ellos me dicen que espere a ver qué dicen.
¿Y tu familia?
No, pues allá están en otro lado.
¿Ellos también se quedaron allá?
Sí.
¿Y no saben nada de ti?
No, nada.
¿Tampoco te has podido comunicar o sí, igual no te contestan?
No, no he sabido nada de ellos. Pero yo pues ya espero estén bien ellos, así como estoy yo bien.
Se olvida la familia. La hermana, pues, mi mamá, pues, no sé si ya falleció porque estaba muy enferma la última vez.
¿Ya no supiste?
Ya no supe. Pero yo pienso que sí, porque mi hermana no me quiere y mi mamá era la única que me ayudaba.
La gente tiene que aprender que tiene que hacer las cosas bien, no así. Atravesar México sin permiso también es ilegal.
In my role as a
true, that's very true. You know, you have to do it. You got to do it legally. You know, you can't do it illegally. You're breaking the law at the end of the day, you know? You can't enter in another country illegally. It's just not possible, man. That shouldn't be a thing.
Journalist over the course of these past few years, one thing that I've learned is that people on the ground who are immersed in an intense experience can only tell you so much about all of the factors at play that are causing their situation, as their primary concerns are reaching a place of safety, health, and happiness. In many cases, I've found that the best people to really talk to are those who are in a stable place but work tirelessly day in, day out to serve these communities. As we mentioned earlier, Ruben Garcia, once called the saint of the El Paso border by the New Yorker, runs a shelter called the Annunciation House. The shelter is currently at the center of a tense legal battle. Several months ago, Republican Attorney General Robert Paxton filed a criminal lawsuit against Ruben Garcia, calling the Annunciation House a stash house for criminal illegal aliens.
This is all according to Annunciation House. 430 were released on Sunday night, 197 on Monday, 181 on Tuesday, Christmas Day.
At this point, it's unclear whether or not the shelter will remain open. But Ruben Garcia is an extremely knowledgeable individual, so here is an extended interview with the man himself. What can you tell us about this place?
Well, that it's been it's been operating, offering hospitality to refugees and migrants for almost 50 years. That has allowed us to have a history of watching the flow of immigrants throughout the years.
Was there a particular experience that made you want to get involved in this kind of work?
I grew up here in El Paso, so I'm a product of the border. This is what I thought that I was called to do, and so that's what I'm doing.
What are some of the main services y'all offer to migrants here?
Primarily hospitality, place to stay, shower, give people an opportunity to contact their family so that they can get tickets and they can move on. The vast majority of people don't stay in border cities.
Do you find that in the past couple of years, most people have came from Latin America, or is it a more international?
Central America, I would say the last couple of years, a significant increase in Venezolanos.
And what do you think has caused this mass migration to the north?
People have been migrating for centuries. The name of the city, Paso al Norte, the pass to the north. When you go outside, you'll see the two mountain chains. People pass through there to go further north. If you ask people today, or 400 years ago, why did you leave? They're gonna answer primarily, I was afraid, I'm hungry.
Y huyendo también de la economía de allá, acuérdese, todo eso.
¿Está difícil el trabajo por allá?
Sí, está difícil conseguir trabajo por allá.
Unfortunately, someone discovers that I can get votes by making a big deal out of this.
Democrat lawmakers care more about illegal aliens than they care about their own constituents. They put foreign citizens before American citizens. We're not going to do that.
It's only when it's in the headlines that you all come. It gives the impression that this is a crisis, this is something new, as opposed to saying this is an issue that we have to collectively address. There are 360 million Americans in the United States. In spite of all the problems that people in the country have, it's not causing people to flee. That's not the case in other countries. 25% of the population of Venezuela has fled. That would be the equivalent of 90 million Americans. Everyone in Venezuela should be living adequately comfortable. But because of the political dysfunction, look what's happened. You're not going to solve the situation in Venezuela by putting up a fence, by bringing down the army. It still allows Venezuela to remain pretty dysfunctional. And they didn't all come here. This is the other myth. The overwhelming number of Venezolanos went to Colombia, went to Peru, went to Ecuador. Yes, we received some, but nowhere near the numbers that other countries.
I know my parents waited a combined like 20 and a half years to apply legally before I was born. It was very difficult and sometimes very discouraging for them and not cheap. Like you would get penalized for their mistakes and there's nothing you can do about but you wait, just wait. That's true. That's true. It's a lot of waiting or so. It's kind of hard to kind of like, you know, balance all of this out, you know. It is pretty difficult to balance all this, you know. It's a pretty long process or so in order for you to get into a thing, because that's just how it is, you know. If you want to go live, you know, migrate or so, live in another country or something like that, you got to go through a rigorous, you know, because at the end of the day, right, you're kind of like a stranger to, you know, to someone's house, you know. That's the only reason why.
People flee because of dysfunction.
What can you tell us about the current situation regarding mass deportations?
Well, there are, like, I think if I remember correctly, I think El Salvador is pretty much the most, kind of like the most chillest place now. Surprisingly enough, it's the most chillest place.
There's been a lot of discussion about it. What do you classify as mass deportation? Does it have to be 3 million? Does it have to be 5 million? How are you actually going to first find them, identify them, and then succeed in being able to remove them? There's a lot of laws on the books that give people certain rights. If you've been living in the United States, you have U.S. citizen children, within the law, you have the right to explain to the judge why I shouldn't go back. Right now, I'm thinking about a family. They were doing well economically. They were fine until one day a hit squad attacked their home. They shot mom. The bullet went through her lung. Here's a family that doesn't want to go back because mom almost got killed. Their children have gone on to go to school. Some of them have already gotten married. If Border Patrol ever discovers this family, they're going to have the right to go before an immigration judge. So it's not just a matter of, oh, you're undocumented, come with me, I'm going to take you. It doesn't work that way.
So you think a lot of the sensational optics about, mass roundups and just dropping people off at the border is sort of meant to push a political agenda as opposed to being reflective of reality?
We know that it's a political agenda.
Annunciation House also stresses how migration, documented or undocumented, can be beneficial to the economy.
In order for a country to maintain stability, you need a certain birth rate. Every woman needs to have 2.1, 2.2 children. That keeps your population stable. That is immensely important for your economy. Right now, China will incentivize you to have babies. Russia, France, Germany, they're all incentivizing. The birth rate in the United States right now is about 1.5. So you're my fairy godmother. You have your wand. Go ahead, close all four sides. Close the Pacific, the Atlantic, the Southern. Not another human being comes in, and watch what's going to happen. Our country can't continue unless we have a healthy influx of immigrants. That's
As long as they do it legally, just do it legally, like, yeah, of course, no problem of like, bringing them in or so, but they have to do it legally, go through the process, The problem is about like, it's declining. The only reason why it's like, declining, why people are not having kids or so, right? It's because everything is just too expensive. Everything's expensive. It's like, it's like, what the fuck, It's like, what do you expect? Housing, food, bills, Yeah, it's very pretty biased on this actual thing or so. I don't know.
It's the truth. However, that's not going to get me votes. Tell them they're murderers, they're rapists.
They're not humans. They're not humans. They're animals.
Tonight, when you go home, look under your bed. There might be a refugee hiding under your bed. When I was in grade school, we were warned about the communists. And now it's, let's be afraid. You're like me, I'm going to protect you from this invasion, etc. The sad thing about it is that, look at how we begin to talk about other human beings in derogatory terms. Is that really who we want to be? We should have immigration policy that allows people to enter legally, that can go to work, that are not taken advantage of.
They are essential workers, and rain or shine, migrant farm workers show up to make sure all Americans have food on the table.
There's been all kinds of stories of the abuse of the H-1B visa.
These companies are bringing in people and paying them less than Americans would get for similar jobs.
I'm so confident that we could come up with some really good proposals for laws that would work so much better than the system we have right now. Nobody has ever wanted criminals to come in. Border Patrol, here in Border Patrol, we have a facility. It's a very large facility that is called the Central Processing Center. Anyone that Border Patrol apprehends is taken to the Central Processing Center. Your fingerprints are going to be matched against the FBI database, the Department of Homeland Security database, the immigration database. If you're from Mexico, if you're from El Salvador, if you're from Guatemala, it's going to be matched against their criminal databases to see if anything kicks out. Even individuals during Title 42, they would push them back into Mexico after they did the fingerprint screening on the off chance that this person has a criminal record. The role of Border Patrol is to identify criminals and keep them from entering the country. It shouldn't be the honest worker. You can't imagine how many people have crossed the 30-foot fence and fallen and end up with all kinds of broken bones. If you survive that, I'll give you a job. It shouldn't have to be that way.
Yeah, it's hard when you have two very polarized opinions that seem to not be able to interact. There should be an easier process to obtain citizenship and be able to get your papers. I mean,
correct. If you have a Pedro or a Jose or a Fabian or Guillermo who crosses the border and is never apprehended, and they make their way into the interior of the United States, well, we don't know anything about them. The statistics tell us that there probably is not criminality.
The one thing I think there is legitimately possibly reason to fear would be the cartels.
Correct, but I can assure you cartels are not crossing the border.
But I guess the thing is, obviously, most coyotes are in some way connected economically to the cartel infrastructure.
They're paying to access the space to cross through. You're correct.
It's unfortunate that it's making billions for the cartel. I wish.
And unfortunately, like they use some of these, like I think if I remember correctly, one of those stories that I heard or so is like they were using like these immigrants or so to transport certain stuff over the border, or they would have to rendezvous with their people or so on the other side and everything like that. I remember something like that.
There was a way that the cartel wasn't the one running the show. Do you think there's any solution around that?
We have this tendency to declare wars. The only war we should declare is the war on addiction. Every year, you and I transfer between $25 and $40 billion in drug profits to Mexico. With that kind of money, it makes it possible for them to corrupt, and that's what makes governments become dysfunctional.
So you think without the American drug addiction, there wouldn't be a cartel?
We have created the Drug Enforcement Agency.
Yeah, I'm not really a huge fan either, because if I remember correctly, if you look at one of the countries or so that is like dealing with the immigrants and everything like that, so far their country is doing pretty damn well, to be honest. I don't know which country is it, but I know it's one of the European countries over there.
The amount of people that are in our prisons right now, the amount of money that we spend, tell me that we're ready to go and declare victory.
Do you think there's some accountability to be taken on behalf of the medical industry here too?
Isn't it interesting that you want to do that with drugs, but you don't want to do that with guns? There is no such thing as a bad gun. There is only a person who uses the gun badly. But with drugs, we want to keep going after the manufacturers of drugs.
But if you look at like Purdue Pharma and some of these companies that like use people as testing ground.
I'm simply saying that's where we have put the emphasis ever since Nixon declared war. And where are we today?
Drug-related deaths are on track to reach record highs this year.
There's certain cartel activities that seem to go far beyond economic necessity.
You're now talking about the abuse, the beatings, the killings, the prostitution. I do believe that there is evil in the world.
You don't think it's just people motivated by self-interest, refusing to consider
a lot of it is clearly self-interest, but I also think that self-interest can be evil.
Oftentimes I think about the self-justification systems in people who do stuff like that. Then you wonder if there is none at all, and if they just wake up and say, I like doing terrible things.
I have to believe that a lot of it has to do with our culture and the need for our culture to really examine itself.
You think America's in a spiritual crisis?
I think it's been in a spiritual crisis for a long time.
Y bueno, ha llegado mi transporte, chicos. Esto fue Canal 5, Channel 5 Latinoamérica. Nos vemos en la siguiente.
After covering such an intense, relatively sobering matter with Josue, I asked him if maybe he'd like to cover something a bit more lighthearted for his third Channel 5 special. He said sure, and sent back what is probably some of the craziest footage I've ever seen.
Yo no sé cómo es posible que, por ejemplo, la gente esté en contra de las peleas de gallos y quieran aprobar el aborto. Para mí, mis gallos son como mis hijos.
Todos los animales tienen emociones y sentimientos. Esas personas deberían de estar en prisión.
Estamos aquí en el ambiente gallístico. Vénganse a divertirse. Realmente es un ambiente muy popular, familiar. Vean, son aves de combate que realmente nacen para eso. Se matan realmente entre ellos.
Yo, aquí Josué para Channel 5, Canal 5 Latinoamérica. Aquí en México, mientras hay estados como Veracruz, Quintana Roo y la misma Ciudad de México que ha implementado leyes para prohibir esta bonita tradición, hoy en el Estado de México estamos a punto de vivir un derbi de gallos, la primera jornada de esta bonita liga aquí en lo que es el Palenque Caseta Vieja.
If you'd like to see our complete, uncut, and extended documentary, Mexico Cockfighting, go to our Patreon, www.patreon.com/channel5. As many of you guys know, we are a totally independent, now multinational news organization, and it's your monthly contributions that keep us in business.
That's cool.
Plus, I'm not sure that YouTube will ever allow this video, so yeah, if you want to check it out, www.patreon.com/channel5. I'll put the link in the description and the pinned comment of this video.
Channel 5 live worldwide, Hollywood and Vine.
Fuck the authority, Channel 5 News.
Channel 55. We don't fuck with custers, and 5 is the best number.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest with you. It's very interesting to kind of listen to because well, granted, I already heard about a bunch of stories or so about this. I've met a lot of illegal immigrants who came over to America for like the big dream and everything like that because their country was so fucked and everything like that, right? Which I don't blame them, right? If I was in their shoes, I'd probably do the same thing too as well, you know? I probably would do the same thing, you know, their country's completely fucked and everything, so it's like might as well try to make the journey or so to make a better living, you know? So, but it's kind of weird to be saying that, like, you know, the country needs immigrants, you know, it needs immigrants to survive, you know? It's like, well, the problem is like, there's other problems that are happening in the country itself, you know, like everything, like the price is going up, the inflation is insane, people don't want to have kids because of that situation itself. A lot of mentally ill people are happening too as well. On top of that, they're all attacking Teslas and shit like that. Everything's exploding and because they hate, you know, they hate freaking what's his face, Elon Musk, you know. There's just a lot more factors, and the funny thing about it, I think if I remember correctly too as well, I think like didn't America have like the booming phase or so like that in the old 1900s or so? They had like a big old booming craze, right? Like there was like a lot of kids happening, right? Was it the boomer babies, right? Yeah, I was like there was people having a lot of kids or so, well, because back then or so, right? Economy wasn't really that, you know, that crazy compared to you know, the economy back then where like, you know, 5 cents, you know, you can get a cheeseburger, you know, but now, you know, now it ain't like that anymore. So it's just the cost of inflation that's just drastically gone up. Yeah, what an interesting video. What an actual very, very, very interesting video. I don't know what this video is, but this kind of like just popped up on my feed or so. Like, I don't know. For me personally, it's just like there's a whole process for you to come in here legally. I'm like, you might as well just do it. You know, I get it. They're a bit strict or so, but if you really want to come here, you know, you gotta put in the work at the end of the day. You know, you gotta put in the work. I'm sorry, you know, that's just the way how life is. Life sucks, you know? I was taught like that for, you know, for a very young age. Life just sucks. You know, you just gotta pull through and push through, you know? But, that's just my personal opinion, you know? As someone who is, like, mixed race and everything like that, you know? I've heard of every single story of what happens at the border, you know? But, it is what it is. Anyways, that's it in the video. You guys can comment, like, subscribe, do all that fancy jazzy stuff, and yeah, it's very interesting, like just kind of a little interesting tidbit or so to kind of like learn about this kind of situation and stuff. Because granted, right, I don't really keep tabs on the IRL world, you know. I'm kind of like personally in my own little bubble at the end of the day, you know. It was definitely a good video to kind of just sit back and just kind of listen to a little bit, kind of have a little bit of a tidbit. People in this age can't understand sovereign nations have autonomy. Lamau, they don't need to accept anyone they don't want. It's not countries have worked since the concept was made centuries ago. Yeah, like they can reject you. You know, you have no right or so. You know, you don't have the rights or so. If you don't, you know, they can like decline you whenever they want to. You know, so it's just the way how life is. I think if I remember correctly, my Mama Ezota came in here with a green card and stuff like that. So, and then later she applied for citizenship. So, yeah, she did the work. So, you know, if she did it, you know, just saying, you know. Yeah, it sucks, but that's just how life is, bro. That's just straight up how life is. Life is just unfair, you know. It's just unfair. I've had my fair shares of like bullshit ass moments with life all the time, you know. So, anyways, that's the end of the video. You guys can comment, like, subscribe, do all that fancy jazzy stuff in there. Let me know what you guys think about, you know, this whole entire like the mass deportation. Are you with it? Are you against it? You know, I like reading the comments section at the end of the day. I like listening to everyone's opinion. So, anyways, that's the end of the video, and peace.